the Minister of State for Defense against President Bola Tinubu's re-election bid in 2027. President General of AYCF, Yerima Shetima, said they have been vocal in its warnings about a brewing conspiracy by disgruntled politicians to undermine President Tinubu. According to him, such protests have been coming from Matawale's political rivals, organized by a few people from Matawale's home state, sometimes using non-Zamfara indigents, one time from the southeast, who never knew the road to Zamfara, as well as people idling in the outskirts of Abuja and beggars to hold placards that they could not even read what the content said against the minister. Barrister,
yeah.
It's quite an interesting read here. One would say it's quite laughable. One would say it's quite intriguing. One would say, oh, well, it's sad, you know, depending on what angle you're looking at it from. But we understand that the president has had quite some allegations. You know, I mean, different sectors have had quite some allegations against the president's race in the next elections in 2027, right? Saying they want to weaken, you know, his potency for the elections, for another term, and so on and so forth. Now, what do you make of Ariwa's allegation here, saying the attack or the protest against Matawale is actually targeted at President Tinubu, citing with the instances he gave, using some persons from Zamfara and from Matawale's hometown as well?
Clearly, even in the very last analysis, we were talking about strategy, and then it could be any form. Sometimes it may not be palatable, and sometimes it may be. And of course, even when it's not palatable, it's just probably to one side, but to some other side, the orchestrator is palatable to him. So the Ariwa, right? Ariwa Consultative Forum, I believe. They are speaking in support of Mr. President. Their position is supportive of Mr. President. And then, but there were some persons who considered that there was a reason for them to protest against whatever perceived inadequacy of the Minister for State, who is in the cabinet of Mr. President. And I wonder why the Arewa Consultative Forum will consider a protest against a minister of government as targeted at Mr. President.
It's not just the Arewa youth, including the APC in general.
Oh, indeed. So yeah. I would wonder. So you wouldn't want any criticism, any protest, any rejection of probably policy direction or manner of execution of policy programs of government, whether by the minister or any aide of Mr. President. Even the president himself, I think if he wants to actually deliver and then to be able to be seen to be potent for 2027 election, then he should allow his ministers and his aides to be checked, and is handling some affairs, some policies of government and programs of government. We should be able to criticize and challenge. And then protest means what? It's an expression of rejection, unacceptance. To say, look, I do not agree with this policy, and then especially if you are strategic about it, and then you are clear about why you disagree, and then why you are unsettled about that particular direction or that policy or program. So look, this is this, and this is the mischief. This is what I think it is that this is not addressing at all. It's permissible, it's allowable in a democracy. But again, even the reaction by the Consultative Forum and then the All Progressives Congress is also expected in a democracy. They would want to protect their government so that they come back in 2027 to tell you they are the best party to also be elected into power. So they do not want anybody to even expose whatever inadequacies that they may have.
But like you said, you should allow people to criticize your government and those under you, so that it gives you some sort of credibility to even run in the coming elections.
And then to be able to identify even where the pitfalls are.
Exactly. So the APC and the Arewa Youth and any other group who is actually fighting against criticizing the government or the president, really free from criticisms, right? Neither is it free from flaws and faults. So if you give people the opportunity to criticize you, shouldn't that give you even higher chances of having them to trust you and looking out for a second term for you?
In fact, the fact that, except we don't seem to understand why we need to really objectively examine the activities of government and to be able to comment one way or the other. as being negative, especially when they are government in power, then it appears that you do not seem to recognize that it's a veritable instrument for you to even check how you're performing.
Okay.
Except you're not self-regulating, except you're not also determined to ensure that where you are probably not performing effectively, that you should, then it means that the people are actually following up your government. Sometimes people will think that you shouldn't even have anybody to speak about you at all in any way. Then you're not there, you don't exist. If Nigerians were not to comment about the government, that even when we are condemning, then it's like you're not there. Don't pride yourself to think that you're performing best.
So do you actually think or agree that the protest against the defense minister is actually targeted at Tinubu?
No, I don't agree.
Okay.
Especially as someone from the background of human rights. It's excellent when you're given. You have to be criticized and you have to be put squarely on track so that you work for people. You are our servant. You work for us.
Okay.
So why shouldn't we tell you, if you're an employer, even the minister himself, wouldn't he criticize some of his aides, those who work in his office, where they are not performing well? So if he has the legitimacy to challenge any aide in his office for not doing well, why shouldn't we? He's serving us. Why shouldn't we tell him he isn't doing well?
Okay, got your
Including
thoughts,
Mr. President.
Barrister. And now on to our final story. Former governorship candidate of the People's Democratic Party in Ogun State, Segun Shomumi, has called for a complete overhaul of the party in order to stabilize it for future elections in the country, decrying the party's recent electoral losses in 3 consecutive governorship elections in the state. The PDP stalwart, who advised the urgent need for the party to restructure its internal working mechanism for optimal capacity and efficiency, also called for a revisit of its that the PDP is already working as a formidable opposition to the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, in providing credible alternative policy options to the present administration. The PDP chieftain disclosed this while speaking on the state of the PDP during a media briefing in UJ. Interesting. Now, a couple of things were highlighted here, one of which is the party, PDP, working to emerge as a strong opposition. Exactly, thank you for that. And then overhauling, yes, to revisit it so that the party can be strengthened again. Barrister, do you think that overhauling is actually what the party needs right now?
Yes. Excellent observation by Shego. Except that before I get to that, I think I'd watched this same Shego when he was eulogizing the PDP at the center after the NEC meeting, and then when some critics were talking about the failure of the PDP at the national level to be decisive with respect to the expected discipline of certain erring members of the political party, and especially when people like Imo Gochinyere and then some other group of members of the House of Representatives actually had a press conference where they were really chiding the People's Democratic Party with respect to their failure to be firm to discipline some members of the party. I recall that Shego was like, oh, the party did well and all that. But it's good that back here in Ogun State, where he had observed that the party had lost election, 3 consecutive elections in Ogun State, and then he had considered that as a mischief. And then he has also considered that why that had happened is because they probably have some internal crisis that they needed to overhaul. Like I said, excellent observation, and that's what I had even said earlier, that political parties need to clearly excellence. So there are 2 roles clearly that political parties could perform. It is either after election, you succeed, you win elections, and then you form the government. Then you have the duty to formulate policies and execute policies at that time. So you are government in power. Otherwise, if you do not form the government in power, that is, you lost the election, then is to play the role of opposition. And playing the role of opposition is to critically examine the policies and programs of government and then to profile alternative solutions to those policies and programs of government that you think that were not adequate, really.
So as an analyst, do you think that the PDP could be losing its core values and ideologies? Do you think so? Because that's one of the reasons for this call, for this overhauling, for an optimal capacity in the working mechanism, and then revisiting the lost values and as well ideologies. Do you think so?
Well, one would ask the first question, what are actually these core values and ideologies and philosophy of our political parties, all of the 19 registered political parties? Do we even really have a clear identity of any form of ideology?
One analyst said they have no ideologies.
Asking that rhetorical question would invariably mean that I haven't been able to identify clearly what direction it could be. But suffice that to say that, okay, they probably have, known to them alone, and then what Shegu probably is perceiving is that, look, we are drifting from our core values and our core philosophy or strategy. And for any entity, any organization, including your workplace here, where you have your core values and your mission, and then your goal, and then your strategic direction, and then you observe at some point on a review of your activities and programs, and then your fortunes, and it appears we are drifting away from our core values, there's always the need to actually redirect your approach, and then all your steps really retract and be able to balance of the People's Democratic Party in government at some level. If they are not at the center as the president, they have states that the People's Democratic Party is running. They have local governments that they are running. Those are also levels of government that we should see a reflection of the political ideology of those political parties. We should, in fact, some political parties elsewhere are even determined not to run election to the center.
Okay.
Their target could be, look, let's form government at the base. What is wrong with our political party, relatively smaller political parties? No political party is actually small, none is big. But the reflection at election, so after election, we'll see that some win and then some don't. But what's wrong with some of those concentrating in their local areas to say, look, we want to win the councillorship elections in respective wards? So that by the time the elections are coming, and then at the end of the election, you find out that some of these parties are probably getting councillors elected on the platform of those political parties into ward structures. And then up to the local government, for instance. If you concentrate your focus at those levels, and then you get an opportunity to exhibit your political ideology, perhaps people will look at what you're doing at those local levels, those smaller levels, and then consider you during the next election.
Okay, so
for the constituency elections,
okay,
perhaps.
quickly before we go, looking at the party from inception since 1998 up to this very moment, looking at their operations, the style of elections, leadership, and all of that, can you say at any point that perhaps there could have been a drift, maybe let's say in their operations or in their style, in anything at all? Could there have been any drift from your observations that indeed could make this call very necessary or timely?
I am not a member of the People's Democratic Party. I have not actually examined them that closely. But being here, I mean, being in the country, and then I know that formed in 1998, but since 1999, when we started, it was actually the People's Democratic Party. And then we had this thing by President Olusegun Obasanjo, and then until Yar'Adua took on, and then a short while he passed on, and so rested in peace, and then Goodluck went on. Is there really a difference between those regimes and then what the All Progressives Congress is doing? And again, even the elements, as the human beings themselves, they are the same. We have had in the All Progressives Congress elements in the People's Democratic Party. So there is a